Good afternoon, Year 6. I'm actually recording this morning before school. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some complex sentences. Some really cool stuff. So let's have a look at a bit of the breakdown of what we're after. Our learning intention today is we are learning to identify the components of complex sentences and create some of our own. Our success criteria: we will be successful if we can list three parts of a complex sentence and create one of our own. This is because the complex sentences add information to our writing. Okay. Definition: a complex sentence is formed by adding one or more subordinate clauses, they're dependent clauses, to the main or independent clause using conjunctions. So basically, three parts: the main clause, the subordinate conjunction, and the dependent clause. What's a clause? Basically, a clause is a simple sentence. Simple sentences contain only one clause or a verb group. So basically, clause is a simple sentence. A complex sentence contains more than one clause, so more than one verb group. A main clause will make sense on its own. Okay, so an example of a main clause would be I went to the shop. That makes sense. A dependent clause, otherwise known as a subordinate clause, relies on the main clause to make sense. So without the main clause, the dependent clause doesn't make sense at all. Let's have a look at the sentence makeup. Okay, so far we've had a look at the definition. Now we're going to look at how we break it down. The complex sentence has three main parts: a main clause, a dependent clause, and a subordinate conjunction. A main clause will make sense on its own. A dependent clause relies on the main clause to make sense. And the subordinate conjunction has two jobs. Firstly, it provides a necessary transition between the two ideas in the first sentence, okay? This transition will indicate a time, place, or cause and effect relationship. Okay, they're words like however, whereas. Okay, we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. Let's have a look at an example. Now, if I'm looking at this example, I'm thinking, okay, I love roast potatoes. Although my mum prefers them mashed, I'm thinking, which part makes sense on its own? My mum prefers them mashed. Prefers what mashed? That doesn't make sense on its own. Okay. I love roast potatoes. Does that make sense? Yes, it does make sense. So that's going to be our main clause. Although, it's going to be our subordinate conjunction because that's leading us into the next part. And my mum prefers them mashed. That's a dependent clause because it does not make sense without the main clause. Okay? So we'll review again. I love roast potatoes. This is the main clause because it makes sense on its own. Although, this is the subordinate conjunction. And my mum prefers them mashed. This is the dependent clause because it needs the main clause to make sense. Okay. Let's try one together. I went to the shop, whereas Mr. Noble didn't. There are three parts: A, B and C. I want you to talk to your partner, person next to you, and discuss what part A, B and C are. Are they the main clause, dependent clause, or subordinate conjunction? Okay, think about which parts make sense. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay. A, I went to the shop. That's the main clause because that makes sense on its own. B is the subordinate conjunction because it leads us into the next part. And C is a dependent clause. Mr. Noble didn't. Okay? That doesn't make sense on its own. So that has to depend, it's dependent on the main clause. Good job. Okay, let's see on our own if we can identify the parts. Now we're going to do this in our head. Okay? We're going to identify the 3 different parts. Although it was raining, I went outside to play with my brother. What are the 3 parts? We have a main clause, a dependent clause, and a subordinate conjunction. Might be a little trick with this one, might be a little bit out of order to what we're used to. Let's have a look. Okay. Discuss with your partner quickly what the 3 main parts are. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay, let's break it down. Although it was raining, I went outside to play with my brother. Although was our subordinate conjunction. It was raining is a dependent clause because it doesn't make sense without the other part. And I went outside to play with my brother is the main clause. That's the main part. It makes sense on its own. It can be a simple sentence on its own. This is an interesting sentence because we put the dependent clause first. Now that can happen. It can go first or after. Okay, depends on our writing. It can add different types of meaning. Okay, and add some information. Makes our writing exciting. Okie dokie. Now it is time to create a sentence of our own. I've added some subordinate conjunctions here to help you out. Okay. You will write in your book, in the grammar section of your book, because we are in our reading rotations, I would like you to write at least 1 simple sentence. If you can write 1 simple sentence, you have been successful. If you can write more than that, you're going above and beyond, and that's great. Okay, so we're going to give you about 5 to 10 minutes to write as many as you can. 1 is fine. If you need help, put your hand up, and I will come over and help you. Okay, now if you're having trouble thinking of a simple sentence, I've added a main clause in there for you. It was, I went fishing last Tuesday. This is a main clause. I went fishing last Tuesday. Your job there would be to add a subordinate conjunction and a dependent clause, something that doesn't make sense. I'd like you to have a think about that. Okay, we're going to press pause on this slide very shortly, and you are going to put a timer on for 5 minutes. Okay, press pause now. Okay, thank you for restarting. I forgot to tell you to restart it. Okay. So we're going to review 3 things we learnt today. 1, main clause. 2, dependent clause. And 3, the subordinate conjunction. We had a look at identifying them, and we had a go at creating one of our own. Now let's think back to what our learning intention was. We are learning to identify the components of a complex sentence. Did we do that? Yes. And did we create some of our own? Yes. We've completed our learning intention. Our success criteria. Are we successful? We will be successful if we can list 3 parts of a complex sentence. Did we do that? Only you can answer that at the moment. And did we create one of our own? If you've done that, you are successful today. Right. Thank you for listening to our complex sentence lesson during reading rotations. Please put your hands up and wait for the next activity.